I can almost guarantee that regardless of how many of these lists exist, every single one of them is going to differ. Then again, as many of these lists as there are, I'm surprised at how many of the same movies keep appearing on them. Any film lover knows that it's next to impossible to compile a definitive list, much less pick out what their favorite film of all time is. Like most people's lists, consider this one unfinished at best, and remember, the list will always change as time passes. Also keep in mind, I don't always follow the popular trends, so this is strictly based on my own opinion. With that being said, here we go. I'm doing Lenski's 25 favorite films. Number 25. The Toxic Avenger. Yeah, a Troma movie made it on the list, and it's a damn good one. Keep in mind, you won't hear the words Troma and good in the same sentence too often. Aside from being the first movie I ever did a review for, this one had a direct influence on how I viewed independent films growing up. When I first saw this as a kid, I was already a dedicated Jason and Freddy fan, and I was also an avid comic book reader. This blended horror and comic books together, resulting in one of the most original slapstick horror comedies of its time. It's about a 90-pound nerd named Melvin who works at a health spa and gets picked on by a gang of hit-and-run thugs. As a result of a prank, Melvin crashes into a barrel of toxic waste and transforms into the first superhero from New Jersey. No joke, that's the film's tagline. He goes around mashing evildoers in all kinds of gruesome ways. The corrupt mayor sees all the people he's put away and calls in the National Guard to try and kill him.
Capture my ass.
While all this is going on, Melvin also finds time for a blind love interest, Sarah. As a superhero movie, it's really entertaining, but I have to warn you, you have to possess a certain kind of humor to enjoy it. And some parts are really intense, like this ultra-graphic scene where Bozo runs over a child's head. Only in Troma. It's very tongue-in-cheek and the acting is so bad it's good. It was followed by 3 sequels with another on the way, but trust me, the quality only deteriorates to the point of unwatchability. There was also a musical, if you can believe that. Hey, if they can make Evil Dead into a musical, they can make anything into a musical. It's something different, and it's definitely got a schlock factor, but it's always entertaining. Number 24. Heavy Metal. Hardcore movie buffs tend to dismiss this as softcore porn in the field of animation. My argument is simple. So what? As far as animation goes, this is one of my favorites, and that probably has to do with the fact that I was going through puberty when I first saw it. It was one of the first DVDs I ever owned, and believe it or not, I consider it an underestimated piece of art. Sure, the story's not terribly deep, but that's what I love about it. Heavy Metal is an anthology film produced by Ivan Reitman and loosely based on the adult magazine of the same name. It tells 6 distinctly separate stories, with a glowing green ball called the Lochnar serving as a plot device to tie them all together. It's got everything from a detective story to its epic fantasies. They all have bizarre plot twists, and no one ever just goes from point A to B. It has a surreal quality to it, and although it gets overshadowed by the amount of gratuitous nudity it has, the music is awesome and the animation is very well done. Whether it's seen as pretentious perv material or an obscure animated gem, if you love animation, consider it a crime for not checking it out.
I tell you, I'm an American citizen. I just lost my papers or something.
Goddamn legal aliens.
Number 23. Schindler's List. This one's so close to the bottom only because it took me so long to see it. For some reason, I was just never interested in seeing a documentary-style film about the Holocaust. I've only seen the movie 3 times, as of this year, and every time I do, it resonates on a deep, emotional level. This one's a tearjerker. I'm not talking about how closely it follows the events of the Holocaust, although Spielberg does a great job of that too, but just how likable the protagonist becomes. What makes Oskar Schindler such an identifiable character is that, like many protagonists in the beginning, he's self-centered and selfish. He's a member of the Nazi Party who uses the war for profiteering, hiring cheap Jewish labor to run his factory. He's also a blatant womanizer and only considers hiring those who are easy on the eyes. He hires a Jewish accountant named Itzhak Stern who sees Schindler's business as an opportunity to save his fellow man, only to get scolded by Schindler when he finds out Stern hired a one-armed worker. Even though Schindler has his faults, he never seems completely heartless. He has genuine sympathy for the Jews, but as a fellow German, he doesn't see any way to help them. There's this famous scene where Schindler tracks a girl in a red dress. It's what eventually happens to this girl that turns it around for Schindler, spending most of his earnings on buying the remaining Jews to work at his munitions factory.
If this factory ever produces a shell that can actually be fired, I'll be very unhappy.
The film also has a fantastically despicable villain in the form of Eamon Goeth, played by Ralph Fiennes. On the set of the film, actual Holocaust survivors began to shake when Fiennes appeared in full costume, because he reminded them so much of the actual person. That's a pretty powerful entity right there. The film has so much going for it, everything from the dialogue to the characters to the music to the cinematography to the uplifting moments is truly inspiring. I would consider this Spielberg's greatest cinematic achievement, and when looking at Spielberg's career, that's saying something. Number 22. Pulp Fiction. This is another one that's at the bottom of the list simply because I'm so fresh to it. I only first saw the movie this year, but I've already sat through it multiple times. I can't explain what makes it so good, but it's been said that it's definitely a movie for people who like movies. I'll say this, it proves how a great script can make or break a movie. Oftentimes, the characters will simply be talking about things that have nothing to do with the film, like what the French call a quarter pounder with cheese, but it's how they dissect the subjects of their conversations that makes listening to them a real joy. Usually I don't really like movies with a ton of dialogue. After all, isn't film a visual medium? But Pulp Fiction is one of those movies that's instantly quotable.
It's over there.
I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing.
The movie follows several characters that, while not directly related, bump into each other at different points. Samuel Jackson and John Travolta are gangsters working for a kingpin named Marcellus Wallace. Travolta is hired to take out Wallace's wife, played by Uma Thurman, in order to show her a good time. Bruce Willis is a down-and-out boxer who Marcellus buys off, charging him with throwing one of his fights. After Willis retaliates and actually kills his opponent in the ring, he's on the run from Marcellus when he realizes his birthright, a watch that his father passed down to him, still resides at his old apartment. There's a lot more to it, but that's the general gist. One of the movie's key innovations is that it has a circular structure, meaning it switches from past to present regularly, and yet it never feels overwhelming or confusing. Piecing together the story is rewarding and all the more fun because it's such a good film to begin with. This is an ingenious movie, and if you haven't done so already, check it out. Number 21. Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. You would think that if I was going to have any of the Friday the 13th movies on this list, it would have to be the original. The original film was innovative for Tom Savini's gory makeup effects, and it was the one that introduced audiences to Mrs. Voorhees' mongoloid son, Jason. But if I had to pick one film that truly highlights the entire spectrum of Jason movies, this is the one I always come back to. Come on, in the first 5 minutes, Jason kills Arnold Horshack, so it just had to be on the list. Aside from just being a fun camp slasher, it has a lot of things for observant horror buffs to watch for.
Where are you?
Karloff's General something.
It's got a great soundtrack by Alice Cooper, some decent action scenes, an exciting underwater climax, and in my opinion, the best performance of Jason played by C.J. Graham. I know everyone tends to give that honor to Kane Hodder because he's down the role for so long, but when I think of Jason, I usually think of Part 6. It's also one of the funnier entries.
Dig him up. Does he think I'm a farthead?
Some of the Friday the 13th films were graphic, some were stupid, and some were just flat out bad. This one is a perfect blend of fun, campy slasher goodness, and I'd recommend it to anyone who's entering the series as a newcomer.